Well, this is what I get for being a single guy living by myself with no one to tell me, no, you can't buy that. I've been collecting and cooking in cast iron for about 14 and a half years now. Wow. And over the course of that time, I have built up a cast iron collection, as you've seen from other videos on my channel. These particular ones are, I guess you could say, my moments of weakness. This was when I decided to finally take the plunge and, yeah, pay an exorbitant amount of money for a cast iron pan for really no reason other than I wanted it. Although, to be fair, some of these pans have been enormously useful and definitely worth the investment. So I guess I started going over the top in 2012 when, as a newbie to the cast iron hobby, I was struck with a burning desire to own a really nice Griswold skillet. I think that happens to all of us when we first start out in this hobby. And so because of that, I ended up succumbing to my whims, and I got this Griswold large logo number 10 on eBay. Now, this particular pan, actually, I did not pay $100 for, at least not by itself. However, when I bought myself a lid from that pan from a separate eBay seller, the total for these two definitely came to over $100. Now, do I regret it? You know, to be honest, maybe. In that it is really great to own a number 10 cast iron skillet, and a Griswold skillet is indeed everything they say it is. It's got a wonderful glass smooth surface. It's a joy to cook in. And yet I haven't really used this as much over the years as I would have liked. You know, over time, maybe sometime soon, I might actually find myself divesting myself of this and perhaps selling this Griswold 10 and lid. I'm not selling it now. I'm not putting this up for sale now. Please don't send me any offers like that. The time might happen if or when I find a Birmingham Stove and Range Red Mountain number 10. In some ways, I certainly do consider this Griswold number 10 to be a life lesson because, as I mentioned, I was struck with the urge to own a Griswold and I paid a ridiculous amount of money for it. Well, it just so happened that only 2 weeks after I acquired this number 10 from eBay, I went to the Brimfield Antique Show in Massachusetts for the very first time. And wouldn't you know it, among the vendors there, what did I see but this exact same large logo number 10 Griswold selling for half the price of what I paid for it on eBay. And that was certainly my life lesson. That was when I finally learned cast iron on eBay in general is ridiculously overpriced. It does seem a lot of these cast iron pans have been the result of me getting an urge and a burning desire to own something that looked really nice. So yes, I guess this is my weakness, because also in 2012, I discovered Potjie's pots from South Africa for the first time. These wonderful, really heavy cast iron cauldrons that look like medieval cauldrons. And for that reason, they are very, very popular, especially among the collectors crowd. And yes, I was once again struck with the desire to own one of these. And at that time, I was able to acquire this through Amazon. At that time, they were selling this huge number 3 size Potjie, which is about 8 liters or 9 quarts in size on Amazon for $100. And of course, they had the free shipping deal from Amazon. So I decided to finally, well, take the plunge and get it. Do I regret purchasing this cast iron pot? Hell no! This is definitely one of my favorite kitchen items. This is a really, really useful pot in my kitchen. It's great because of its size, because it holds a lot, because it's deep, and you can do deep frying and make all kinds of stews and other wonderful dishes in this. This I am not regretting one bit. It was certainly well worth the investment. And I can definitely say the same thing about my next investment. Folks who know my channel are very familiar with this particular beast, and that would be Stumpy, my number 14 size Birmingham Stove and Range Century Series skillet. This was also an eBay score. Back in those days, eBay sellers didn't know what BSR was, and I saw that it was a seller calling it an unknown cast iron pan, and it had a number 14 on it, so I thought this might actually be a Red Mountain. It was selling at that time at a price of $125. And yes, I was once again struck with that burning desire, and I decided to pay for it, and I got it. And those of you, again, who have seen all of the many videos I have made with good old Stumpy here will know this is absolutely worth the investment. I've said many times on my channel, and I certainly stand by it, that if you have an opportunity to get at least one really big cast iron pan, then definitely do it. You will be amazed at the amount of use you will get out of a big pan like old Stumpy here. Stumpy is the world's greatest pizza pan. He's also the world's greatest turkey roasting pan. You can even take him on a camping trip, and he makes a wonderful griddle for just about anything you want to cook over the fire or the grill. However, I have to be honest and say I have not been quite as enthusiastic about this admittedly really nice cast iron pan, and this would be a Birmingham Stove and Range Century Series cast iron spider. Yes, the kind that you use for cooking outdoors. I have unfortunately used this particular spider, I think maybe a total of twice so far since I acquired it several years ago, and that's really just because of my lifestyle. I mean, there are some people here on YouTube and otherwise who live for coal cooking, and they live in their Dutch ovens and their spiders and the like. In my case, I have really not had that much of a use for it, but again, that's just the way I am. On the other hand, this was an eBay score that I most definitely do not regret. The eBay seller was actually selling this as a Griswold oval roaster, and I sent him a message stating that that was not a Griswold. This is in fact a Lodge oval roaster. And so because of that, he agreed to reduce the price of this piece substantially, and while I did still pay over $100 for it. Here is the result. The Lodge Wildlife Series Deep Fryer, which of course was originally made by Birmingham Stove and Range as their sportsman deep fryer. So between this really good deep fryer and this wonderful lid here, can definitely say I do not regret this. I have gotten a lot of use out of this because this is essentially an oversized Dutch oven, and I have done everything in this that you can do with a Dutch oven. Deep frying, roasting whole chickens, and many, many other things. And now we have to ask the question, is it worth it to acquire a vintage Stover cast iron waffle iron? There are folks, of course, who make waffles like 5 or 6 days a week, and so in that case, it's definitely worth it. I have indeed used this a few times, and yeah, I have made some pretty good waffles on this. So as to the question of whether or not I regret this, I think I'm going to hesitate and say no, I don't regret it. I'm going to keep practicing using this and keep making waffles. And now we come to a pair of cast iron pans that I can definitely say I splurged on really more for sentimental value than any actual collector's value or even use in the kitchen. I mean, this is the New York cast iron skillet from the American Skillet Company, and they regularly sell this on their website for, yes, over $100. About a year and a half ago now, the company announced that they were shutting down their production of these cast iron pans, and so I felt it was probably the last opportunity to get a New York shaped cast iron skillet. And yes, I do admit this is kind of a luxury item, and I have indeed made pizza and cornbread and a few other things in this, although this is really more for sentimental reasons than anything else. However, no, I am not regretting it. And of course, praise Bob. This is a cast iron pan, a large cast iron pan with the image of J.R. Bob Dobbs, founder of the Church of the Subgenius. This is a subject that a lot of people on my channel have really scratched their heads over and can't figure out what the hell this thing is supposed to be. Good, that's part of the whole idea. I had stated that this particular pan, in fact, was born in a freak meteor strike about a year and a half ago, and I'm still going to stand by my words there. Whether or not you think I'm lying is up to you. On the other hand, I will say that on Etsy, there is a really good company that makes custom-made designs on large cast iron pans like this. They call themselves Legacy Machine Design, and as you can see, the results are exquisite. Now, these two enameled cast iron pots are, interestingly enough, both the result of dabbling in Bitcoin on two separate occasions. In 2020, I ended up acquiring this Stumpy enameled cast iron pot, whereas only last Christmas in 2024, I was lucky enough to receive the Lodge USA enameled cast iron Dutch oven. In both instances here, I'm not even sure I could say I paid $100 each for these, because yes, they definitely do have a price of over $100, but for both of these, I managed to score what I thought was a pretty good deal. The Stumpy Dutch oven was a replacement for my Le Creuset 13-quart cast iron Dutch oven, or French oven as they called it, which had finally worn out after years of use, and that the enamel was actually beginning to chip, although I had, in fact, acquired that Le Creuset Dutch oven in a not-so-great condition in the first place, and yet I still managed to get about 9 years of use out of it. I really wanted a replacement for that because it was a massively useful cast iron pot. And so in 2020, I finally decided that, I had about 1/3 of a Bitcoin total, and I really had no idea what I was going to do with it. And so it was at that time that I decided to invest a little bit and replace the Le Creuset cast iron pot. And so the result has been this really useful and wonderfully light for its size enameled cast iron Dutch oven. And once again, especially since technically I only invested Bitcoin in it and really didn't pay any so-called real money, although you could say all money is fake, I'm not even sure I could say that I paid $100 for this. And the results of this, on the other hand, has been great in that I have gotten a lot of use out of this big cast iron enameled pot, and I most certainly do not regret acquiring it. And I can definitely say the same thing about these two enameled cast iron pots, the Lodge USA enameled 7-quart enameled Dutch ovens, which are selling on Lodge's website at a price, well, a lot higher than $100. But, well, my Bitcoin situation had definitely changed since I acquired the Stumpy Dutch oven, in that I had to cash out almost all of my Bitcoin in 2022 to help make the down payment on my home, and I certainly don't regret that either. But I only had like a fraction of a Bitcoin left, and I was really uncertain what to do with that, because the price of Bitcoin now has reached the point where it would be impossible to invest in Bitcoin in any way that I would end up with any kind of substantial amount ever again, unless I give up my entire life savings, and I am not about to do that. So finally, last fall or so, I decided to simply cash in the rest of my Bitcoin. I had like maybe about 0.2% of a Bitcoin, and that was still enough to help afford the Lodge USA enameled cast iron Dutch oven, so that I ended up paying maybe about $50 of my own money, and all the rest of that went to from the Bitcoin. As well, at that time, Lodge was having a 1/3 sale off on this. So combining all of that together, it meant I could actually afford this. And then just through a fluke of bookkeeping or shipping or however you call it, Lodge ended up sending me 2 of them. So it was an honest mistake, and I actually did report it to them, geek that I am. But here is the result. So technically, with the Bitcoin investment and everything, I definitely could say that I paid $100 for it. But other than that, I might also say that, well, with these two, I was extremely lucky to get a once-in-a-lifetime deal. And at last, we come to what might be the prize of my cast iron collection. This is my biggest cast iron pot. This is my oldest cast iron pot. This is a Savory and Company from Philadelphia, 19th century 15-gallon cast iron cauldron. And yeah, this is definitely something that I am quite proud of, and in no way do I regret acquiring this, even though I've only used it a few times, technically, to make huge pots of jambalaya, all of which have turned out great. And this was, again, one of those once-in-a-lifetime scores at the Brimfield Antique Show. And this was really where, once again, I learned a life lesson about spending over $100 on a cast iron pan or a cast iron pot here. In that, when I came across this at Brimfield, it was, of course, fairly rusty, and it is also quite pitted on the inside, even though there are no holes or anything like that. And that would certainly be why the seller was actually selling this at a price of $200. It was also Sunday, and he was trying to get rid of as much of his inventory as possible. But still, it's like when I came across this and he said the cost was $200, I literally stood there and paced back and forth a little bit for about 15 minutes or so, pondering it back and forth in my head. I mean, $200 is a lot of money. On the other hand, do you think I would ever be able to find a deal like this for the rest of my life? And furthermore, I finally came to the conclusion that if I walked away and I did not get this, I would be kicking myself for the rest of my life. And that was why I actually did make the investment and ended up with a huge cast iron cauldron. Do I regret this? Hell no. And yes, it's true. Over the past 14 years, I've spent over $1,000 on just these cast iron pots and pans. However, for the most part, I haven't regretted it, with maybe one or two exceptions, and I'm more than happy to own these, and especially to cook with them. Especially since I know I'll be cooking in these pots and pans for the rest of my life.